Hello, this is Bonsai Anonymous, and also I'm going to be putting a little bit of trumpet stuff on here, and that's why the piece of music's on the screen. It is. It's probably let me before I get to that. Let me just say a few things. I've been very lucky in my life to study with some really, really, really great teachers, and actually great players too, but that's not necessarily a requirement. The great player part is what brings the experience of the professional world to the students. So, and that's very important too. The first trumpet teacher that I had that I really, really liked was Bill Fund. And Bill was the trumpet teacher at University of Northern Colorado. And he came along at a perfect time for me, because I had just gotten braces. And he told me that it was a little too late, but my teeth were better before the braces suited for playing than they were after, and certainly since. So anyway, but great musician, great teacher, great insights into the trumpet and the trumpet embouchure and teeth structure and all sorts of a real scholar of the instrument, as well as being a fantastic person and fantastic player and musician. So he was one of the teachers that I had, and had a couple of lessons with Professor Hickman at Arizona State, but I don't really remember them. But I did have another teacher in Arizona that I kind of skipped over, and I'm sorry I did. But I was thinking about teachers at universities, and this teacher I'm going to mention right now, I did not study with him at a university. I was going to Arizona State University at the time, and I heard that Bud Brisbois had moved to town. And if you don't know who Bud Brisbois is, not surprised. He's not a bonsai person, but one of the best lead trumpet and high note trumpet players ever. And he got me up to a high F with braces. Now, not his kind of high F or any real usable one to speak of, but what his whole thing was spinning the air, and I did what I thought he was asking me to do, and really did make some good progress with him. Unfortunately, he chose to end his own life at a certain point, and was no longer really around him at that time. He used to ask me to bring Maynard Ferguson charts from the school, because I was going to Arizona State at the time and playing in the jazz band, and he used to ask me to bring Maynard's part to the lessons so he could look at it and see if he could play it. And of course he could play it. The guy had one of the best high ranges in history. Oh God, I'm sorry, I'm getting excited here and I'm knocking my thing here around. It's okay. Let's see if I can make it back up here. It's gotta be here. Okay, I want to keep it on this page if I can, because it's a very important page. We'll get to it. So anyway, Bill Fund was a great teacher. Bud really had some things to say about air and range. Very helpful to have heard them. I wish I had more of a record of my lessons with Bud, but we never wrote anything down. He had a tiny little room at a music store, just big enough for 2 chairs, basically. And believe me, sitting in a chair right next to him when he was in his glory, up way above high C, was something. Let me tell you, it was something. Okay. So then I studied with Bill Fund, and I got to play once with Stan Mark, very famous lead trumpet player with Maynard Ferguson. He moved to the area and got a gig with him. I'm not going to really make any judgments whatsoever. It was an experience, and I'm glad I had it. What a strong trumpet player. Anyway, so then I graduated with my master's and moved to Florida and started to be a graduate student at University of Miami. I never did take lessons there. I played in a brass quartet because I was teaching full time, and it was very difficult to put that all together. Anyway, so much for that. So while I was here, I got to play alongside John Harner on some gigs. He moved here briefly. Hopeful of a way to make a living here. I don't really know if a lead trumpet player can make a living in South Florida. I can think of a couple that certainly could, but as far as how many gigs there are, that's the thing. Good paying gigs, how many are there? It's not Memphis or any of the places where Atlanta or any places where there's a lot of musical activity and high paying gigs with lead trumpets. And there's some on Miami Beach. It used to be anyway, I don't know, but enough of that. So John Harner, a really nice guy, and incredible sound and volume and range, all of that. My favorite story about him is one that I'm actually in. I wrote a little stupid chart on You Are the Sunshine of My Life for a Stan Kenton clinic way back in the 70s. And this was right around the time that John was with the band, 75, 76, of course. And at one of the clinics, I wrote this chart. And if you wrote your chart, got the parts copied, Stan would have the band play it for you. And I have a recording of that chart with John Harner playing lead on it. And I think the last note was an E written on his part, high E. And for me at the time, that was getting out there, to write a high E in a chart and think that somebody would play it. But the deal was on these camps that you would bring your chart up when Stan called your name. And I have that on recording too. I'm very, very glad. He would call your name and you'd go up and you'd pass out your chart, and then you would conduct it. And they would make a recording of it for you. And it's a good thing these recordings were made, because a lot of us who were up on that stage with our charts can't remember a thing about them. Standing in front of Kenton's band, hearing your music being played. Maybe your first chart could have been. I think it was my second, but geez. So anyway, back to John Harner. At the end of the chart, I had written this high E, and I knew it was coming up, and I didn't want to insult him or anything, so we just bombed ahead, and I never said anything, but I was worried. I just heard him play some screaming high parts in some other charts, but here I am worried about my little high E. So anyway, we get to the end of the chart, and evidently he liked it, because he took that E and he went up to a high A. And that's on top of the fourth flugelhorn. And I heard this note and I just about passed out. And I just kept my composure long enough to cut the band off, not leaving him up there like that. And I just I'm sure I just stood there with my mouth open. It would be great to see a video of that, or even a picture of that. Of course, it doesn't exist. So anyway, fast forward to living in Florida and John Harner moving here. And this had to be in the 90s, maybe the 2000s. I don't really know. But in any case, a long time after 1975 or 76, when he played that high note. at the end of that high note at the end of my chart. And I thought, I was so out of it that I thought he played a G. Took the E and made it into a G. And if I had thought at all, I would have realized that that wouldn't have made any sense in the chart to end on a G. So anyway, I'm playing a gig with John Harner, and I'm thinking, you know, I'd ask him about that. And so I said, you know, John, many years ago, I was at one of the clinics, and you guys played one of my first charts, and I'm sure you don't remember. It was Tim Hagens was in the band, and you played the solo on it, and it was "You Are the Sunshine of My Life." And
did you mean TV?
No.
Sorry, I didn't find a group or device named Light.
Thank you. My little electronic friend back here is interrupting me, and that's not a good thing because then I get lost. So anyway, we're playing this gig, and I'm thinking, you know, I really ought to ask him about that. I said, you know, I know you don't remember back in the 70s, you know, all those clinics, but I just wanted to thank you for playing lead on my chart. He said, what chart did you write? And I said, I wrote a chart on "You Are the Sunshine of My Life." He said, oh, yeah. And he's nodding his head, and I'm thinking, he's giving me that fake, you know, head nod, like, yeah, I remember, sure, yeah, I remember you, I remember you. But he was nice enough to at least insincerely acknowledge that he remembered it. And I'm thinking that in my head, you know, this is a nice guy to do that. He doesn't have to. And but I said, you remember that? And he said, yeah. I said, that high G at the end just really took my head off. And he looks at me and he says it was an A. It was a fantastic moment. So anyway, I never did study with John, but I had that one moment with him that was really cool. Shortly after that, I was introduced to Ken Ricci, a trumpet player who came up through Juilliard and with, what's his name, John Smith, is that his name? The New York Phil Smith. Yeah, Phil Smith. He went to school with him. So that was of that generation. And he ended up not going into symphonic playing. Ended up going into commercial work, show work, lead trumpet work. And he was as powerful as John Harner for sure. I mean, I don't want to make a judgment of the two, but I stood in front of Ken for years. He played first trumpet in my band, and I stood in front of him and felt it. And I only stood in front of John Harner that one time, but they were comparable. Let me just say that. And I had great chops, at least great naive chops, until I had my teeth straightened, and then of course they all went, whatever there was there left. And from that point on, it was always a real struggle for me. But Ken, I was playing in the band occasionally as well as directing it, and Ken saw that there were some things he could help me with, and he said, I'd like to give you lessons. I said, yes, that's fantastic. I don't think I can afford you though. You know, because I was thinking, here's $200 a lesson, or I don't know what I thought, but he said, I'll give you a lesson for $25 a week. And I did a face palm before there were face palms, and I said, sign me up. And studied with Ken for at least 2 years. Now, as I've said before, my memory is leaving, and I can't actually even place the years that I was with Ken. But there were two, at least, and I should look it up. I got the notebooks with all the dates in them, but I haven't done that. So we started, and let me say a few things about Ken before I go any farther. Fantastic lead trumpet player. He played with Phil Smith in the graduate student brass quintet at Juilliard. So, as far as having a classical legit career, that would have been nothing. But I think he enjoyed swinging things that were challenging, and that wouldn't have happened in a classical career. And he certainly could swing, no doubt about it. And he literally swung the band by the nose when he played. Him and Jim Wong, our lead trombone player, were just like superhuman. Anyway, so Ken said, he told me, he said, I think it's important that you know my lineage too. I don't know if he used that word, but that's what it is, his lineage. He was driven up to New York City every week to take a lesson with Bill Vacchiano. His father drove him up and drove him back. And you don't, as a teenager, I don't know that you got lessons with Vacchiano. I don't know, but Ken did. And so he had all that from his teen years. And then, and Vacchiano had studied with Schlossberg. Let me just say that. Vacchiano had studied with Schlossberg. So directly through Vacchiano to Ken to me. And there were things that Ken taught me about Schlossberg, for example, that I never heard anywhere else. Never heard, never read. None of that. How to play the book. How to play the Schlossberg daily drills. How do you do it? Most of us, myself included, looked at that book the first time. I have the first edition of it sitting here in front of me on the stand, which I bought many, many years ago for $2.50. And when I got it home, I opened it up, and some of it looked all right, but I didn't have to go very far before I saw things that I thought I will never, ever be able to play this. And so I kind of put the book on the back of the bookshelf, and none of my teachers actually had me do anything in it. I don't know why I bought it at this point. But anyway, that's the past. So it turns out that there is a way to play Schlossberg and gain something from it. I believe what you gain from it is exactly what Schlossberg wanted you to gain, which is facility over the full range of the horn. Endurance, range, all of it. But it's my opinion from having studied with Ken that I would never have been able to come on to this approach on my own, because I played the book a few times and I just was so discouraged by it, because 2 or 3 exercises down and I'm not doing anything. You know, 2-octave slur, lip slur, yeah, okay. So anyway, it's possible to do that. And one of the reasons that I decided to make these potentially self-embarrassing videos is that I don't really want to go without this information being somewhere. And so my plan is to, as I try to get my own chops back together, I quit playing in 2017, year's 2023. As I try to get my own chops back together with some new teeth and probably a new embouchure, I'm going to use the Schlossberg book when I'm ready for it, which I'm not yet. I'm going to start with the Arbans. And as far as the trumpet is concerned, those 2 books, I think, are the premier books. I have some others, and I kept some, and I gave a lot of them away. And I have a few things to say about some other things trumpet related too. But please understand, I'm not a hot trumpet player. I can play jazz, and I can do a creditable job on a legit gig. but none of this came particularly easy for me. And so I want to share what I learned. Maybe it won't be so difficult for someone else. The reason that page 56, exercise 69, is on the screen and on my music stand, front and center, is that it is the number one exercise, maybe in the world, but certainly in the Arbans, and that's saying something, in my opinion. This is all my opinion, and my teacher never said this, but we certainly spent enough time on this page for me to believe that he believed it too. As far as philosophy or belief, Ken was not into any of that. He was into how does it sound, and using, is it soft, too soft, too loud, too short, too long. Philosophy didn't really play a lot of it. But this page, which has probably been massacred almost as much as the etudes in the back of the book, has the key to learning how to play the trumpet. It has the key on it. And I'm not going to tell you what that key is right now. We'll get to it. I also have some things from Hal Graham, who some of you may know as an early colleague of I can't remember his name. Number one lead trumpet teacher. I'll find out here. Carmine Caruso. I knew I had his book back there. So that's another thing you'll find. If you watch my bonsai videos, you'll know I don't remember things very well. But I have to get them down when I remember them. So Hal Graham was a colleague and co-author of the Carmine Caruso method with Carmine Caruso. They had a parting of the ways, and I don't really know why they did and what the result of it was, but Hal lived in this area, and I studied with him too. And I have reduced to a couple of laminated sheets the basic ideas that he was trying to get across. And much of this is not only derived from Caruso, but derived and found in the Arbans book. So as far as some of the other aspects of trumpet playing, they're going to wait. I want to talk about playing melody. I want to talk about improvising. And I want to talk about scat singing. But for right now, this is Bonsai Anonymous, Ducky's Channel, and page 56. Signing off.